Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hero's Path. Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you are watching this video and subscribe the channel. Keanu Reeves entered the luxury jewelry summit, his attire simple. No tuxedo, no entourage, only a small stone on a leather string. The grandeur of the venue, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and security in tailored suits, stood in stark contrast to his unassuming presence. Eyes flickered toward him, some curious, others dismissive. Whispers trailed in his wake, none loud enough for him to hear but palpable all the same. He was met with mockery, ignored, and judged unworthy of being there. A woman in a sequined gown even adjusted her path to avoid brushing against him, as if his simplicity might tarnish her glittering facade. What they didn't know, however, was that Keanu wasn't there to admire jewelry. He was there to test them. The stone around his neck, rough and unpolished, carried more weight than any diamond in the room. It was a relic of a promise, a testament to a life far removed from this world of excess. And when the truth surfaced, it would not only change the room but also the perception of what truly matters. The morning sun filtered through soft curtains of a quiet hotel suite, high above the Dubai skyline. The room felt calm, almost as if it had paused in the midst of a city that never stopped moving. Outside, the Burj Khalifa pierced the clouds, a monument to human ambition. The wind stirred the palms, carrying the dry desert heat and the anticipation of another lavish day in the city of gold. Keanu stood alone before a mirror. No jacket, no tie, no watch. There was nothing extravagant about him, only quiet confidence and eyes that held stories deeper than time itself. On the table beside him sat a small wooden box, worn at the corners from years of handling. The carvings on its surface were faded, the wood smooth from touch. Gently he opened it, revealing a thin leather cord with a pale green stone suspended in its center. It wasn't polished or glittering, but it held weight, not in carats, but in memory. The stone wasn't valuable by any traditional measure, but to her, it was priceless, a symbol of love. Nadia had pressed it into his palm with tiny fingers, her smile brighter than the African sun. He remembered the dust on her cheeks, the way her laughter had echoed through the clinic where he'd funded her heart surgery. Now, he placed the necklace over his head, letting the stone rest against his chest, cool against his skin. With a quiet adjustment, he hid it beneath his shirt, the necklace almost invisible. He gave his reflection one last look and spoke softly, though it wasn't really to the mirror. It was for Nadia, and maybe for the world. Let's see if they still remember what love looks like. There were no cameras outside his door, no entourage, no grand announcement. Just a man stepping into a world, not to be seen, but to see. The elevator descended silently, its mirrored walls reflecting his solitude. A group of businessmen boarded on a lower floor, their conversation halting as they took in his appearance. One adjusted his Rolex unconsciously, as if reaffirming his own worth. Keanu ignored them, his mind already ahead, in the exhibition hall where the true test awaited. Keanu walked into the Dubai Exhibition Center, a palace of privilege, stacked with glass and gold. Inside, everything shimmered, even the air, which seemed perfumed with a scent of power. The wealthiest people in the world had gathered for the International Jewelry Summit, adorned in custom suits and rare gemstones. And into that world, Keanu stepped, alone. No tuxedo, no silk pocket square, no diamond-studded lapel pin. Just a simple white linen shirt tucked neatly into khakis, polished brown shoes, and around his neck, barely visible beneath his collar, the humble necklace. It was no more than a stone on a leather string. Keanu walked quietly, but that quietness was unwelcome in such a place. The polished floors reflected the chandeliers above, creating an illusion of walking on light itself. Yet every step he took felt heavy, as if the air resisted his presence. At the front desk, two receptionists stood behind a pristine white counter. One was tapping away on a tablet, her manicured nails clicking against the screen. The other glanced up slowly, her smile unwelcoming. "Sir, deliveries go through the service entrance at the back." Keanu nodded faintly. "I'm here for the Grace collection." The receptionist blinked, processing his words. She glanced him over. His shoes, his shirt, the modest necklace peeking from beneath his collar. Her gaze lingered just a second too long on the stone, her lips pursing slightly. "The Grace collection," she repeated, skeptical. East Pavilion. VIP only. Do you have a pass? Her hesitation was clear. In her eyes, he didn't belong. The other receptionist, sensing the tension, leaned in slightly, her voice dripping with false politeness. We've had issues with people slipping in. The open displays are in the West Wing. If you're just browsing, her voice trailed off, and the implication was clear. She saw him as a man wandering into a Rolls-Royce showroom with no intention of buying. Keanu didn't react. He simply nodded, offering a quiet "thank you" as he turned away. But the words had landed. The room began to look at him differently. In the Sapphire Pavilion, the air was electric with energy. Flashes from cameras, designers surrounded by journalists, and at the center of it all, the towering display of the Grace Collection. This was his creation, his dream. Keanu stepped closer to the nearest case, admiring a pair of rings crafted from reclaimed emerald fragments, pieces once discarded but now reborn. A man in a tailored suit nearby scoffed into his champagne. Sentimental nonsense, he muttered to his companion. Who wears recycled gems? Keanu's fingers brushed the glass, his reflection overlapping with the rings inside. He didn't think it needed applause, but it was clear that it would be appreciated by those who valued innovation. People who saw beyond price tags and understood the true meaning of luxury. It was then that Clara Deers noticed him. Clara was the communications director for one of Europe's most exclusive jewelry houses, a woman who had built her career on knowing who mattered and who didn't. She scanned him as she approached, her eyes lingering on the way his shirt wrinkled near his waist, the simplicity of his necklace, the worn leather of his shoes. She was swift to cut through the crowd, her heels clicking like a metronome measuring the rhythm of privilege. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sugary but stiff. "This section is reserved for patrons, designers, and media affiliates. May I ask what capacity you're here in?" Keanu turned to her, calm and composed. "I'm just here to see the collection." Clara paused, her gaze fixing on the necklace. "Interesting choice," she said with a tight smile. "A very rustic one." Her assistant nearby let out a small laugh under her breath. One leaned over to whisper, "He looks like a yoga instructor who took a wrong turn at the airport." Clara edged closer. "Sir, this exhibit is curated to reflect a specific standard. It's not open to casual foot traffic." The word "casual" hung heavily in the air. Keanu nodded again, unfazed. "I'm not here to disrupt anything. Just wanted to see what grace looks like in a place like this." She considered him for a moment, the edge in her voice now softening. There was something about his stillness that intrigued her. Was he pretending? Or did he not realize how out of place he seemed? Clara studied him for a long moment before she turned to a nearby security guard, loud enough for the surrounding guests to hear. "Please assist this gentleman. He's clearly not where he's supposed to be." The security guard walked over, not aggressive, but dismissive in every step. His uniform was crisp, his expression bored. This was routine for him. "Sir, we need to maintain the atmosphere here. This isn't open browsing." Keanu repeated, softly, "Atmosphere." The word tasted bitter on his tongue. He turned away, and as he passed, he caught his reflection in a glass case. His modest necklace a faint blur behind diamonds that no one had ever loved. The contrast was striking. Cold, perfect gems displayed under spotlights versus his warm, imperfect stone hidden beneath his shirt. The room didn't stop. It drifted back into its rhythm. Clinking glasses, hollow laughter, polite applause, as if nothing had happened. But something had. Keanu Reeves, quietly and efficiently erased. Zara Malik had been watching the entire scene unfold, not from the shadows, but from the periphery, where those with talent but without pedigree were allowed to stand. Her fingers tightened around her clipboard. She wasn't wearing designer heels or diamond earrings, just a borrowed dress stitched together with hope. This was her first time showcasing a design under the Grace Collection, and she had poured every ounce of her courage into being here. But now, her focus had shifted. She could no longer ignore the man who had just been dismissed like an unwanted guest. Zara could see the way people like Clara and her team looked at him. They thought he was nothing. But she knew better. Clara's words had cut through the room. Rustic souvenir. Not where he's supposed to be. Zara's curiosity turned to concern. She had been adjusting a display when she first heard the voice, clipped, sharp, like glass beneath velvet. Then she saw him. The man standing tall, quiet, composed. And then it hit her. The necklace. The stone was unmistakable. Nakuru greenstone. She had helped carve it years ago at St. Miriam's Children's Shelter. There were only 3 of them made, and she had never known who received them. Now she knew. Her breath caught. This man, this nameless benefactor, was the one who had funded clean water for her school, who had made literacy possible for her, who had given her a floor to sleep on instead of the dirt. And they had laughed at him, dismissed him, called him a wanderer, a man with a souvenir. Zara felt fury building in her chest, sharper than grief. It wasn't just the way Clara had dismissed him, it was the ease with which everyone had followed. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about him. The stone he wore. The silence they had allowed. She wanted to shout, to tell the room who he was, but she didn't. Deep down, she understood. He hadn't come to be recognized. He had come to see if they could recognize Grace without a name, without a press badge, without a tuxedo. And they had failed. Keanu sat quietly on a low marble bench, away from the center of the hall. His shoulders were relaxed, but his chest felt tight. The quiet hum of luxury buzzed around him, but none of it reached him. It wasn't raised voices that had created the weight. It was the indifference, the dismissiveness, the casual cruelty of people who thought they could decide who deserved to belong, based solely on fabric and posture. No one had asked his name. No one had asked his purpose. They had only seen what he wore, or didn't wear, and judged him. And yet from across the room, someone had seen him. Zara had already crossed the room before she fully realized what she was doing. The words, Nakuru greenstone, echoed in her mind as she moved toward the bench where Keanu sat. Her heart was racing, the cool marble beneath her fingertips grounding her as she approached him. She wasn't sure why she was drawn to him, whether it was the necklace he wore or the way he had been dismissed so easily. But something in her knew that he wasn't just another rich man who had wandered into the wrong space. He was someone who had mattered in her life. Someone who had quietly changed the course of her future. Keanu didn't notice her at first. He was lost in the hum of the room, his eyes distant, almost as if he were somewhere else entirely. But then, just as she was about to speak, he turned his gaze to her. His eyes were calm, patient, almost as though he were waiting for something. "I know who you are," Zara said, her voice soft, yet clear. Keanu tilted his head slightly. "You do." "Yes," she replied. "You don't know me, but I know you. I remember that stone. I remember the children at St. Miriam's. You funded our school. You helped us survive. Without you, I wouldn't be here today." Keanu's eyes softened. He sat up straighter but didn't speak. Zara continued. "I saw the way they treated you. The way they dismissed you, as though you didn't belong. But you do. You belong here more than anyone else in this room. What you did for us, it meant everything." He looked at her for what felt like an eternity. It was as if he was seeing her, really seeing her, for the first time. And it was in that moment, both of them standing in the quiet shadow of judgment, that something profound happened. They both knew that true grace was not about recognition. It was about the depth of connection. Keanu didn't smile, but his gaze lingered on her, steady and unwavering. It wasn't pity he felt, nor pride, but a deep, quiet understanding. "Thank you," he said simply, as if the words alone could never express the depth of his gratitude. Zara felt something shift in the air. There was no applause, no grand gesture, but in that moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of truth. The wealth in the room, the glittering jewels, the opulence. It all seemed hollow now, insignificant in comparison to the simple act of recognition. And yet, as she looked around, she realized that in this space, that simple truth might be the rarest thing of all. Without another word, Keanu stood up, his posture unchanged, and quietly walked away. There was no fanfare, no need for validation. He didn't need the approval of those around him. He had already done what he came to do. As he exited the hall, Zara watched him go, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time that day, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had seen the grace, the humanity, the love beneath the surface, and that was something that no amount of diamonds could ever outshine. She wondered how long it would take for others to see it too. The room, meanwhile, continued to buzz with shallow conversations and clinking glasses. But the glint in their eyes was no longer the same. Something had shifted, something small but irreversible. A few guests glanced toward the exit, as if suddenly aware of an absence they couldn't name. The Grace Collection, with all its beauty and glamour, had taken on a new meaning that day. It wasn't about wealth or status. It wasn't about diamonds or gold. It was about something deeper. Zara turned back to the display case, her fingers brushing the glass where Keanu had stood. The reclaimed emerald rings seemed to glow under the lights, their imperfections now telling a story more valuable than perfection ever could. Nearby, Clara adjusted her blazer, her earlier confidence faltering just slightly. She opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again. The stone around Keanu's neck, the one she had called rustic, now haunted her in its absence. As the summit went on, there were murmurs and whispered conversations about the quiet man with the stone. Some were curious, others confused. But not one person had the courage to truly ask who he was, what he represented. In the end, it didn't matter. Zara knew the truth. Keanu Reeves had come to remind them that the world was not defined by wealth, but by the kindness you gave, the lives you touched, and the love you left behind.